beautiful and destructive, useful and dangerous. Fire has been part of our civilization since the earliest days, and properly used, fire has great benefits, but misused, fire can be incredibly destructive. Every day, the men and women of the fire service are asked to stand firm in the face of danger. They risk their lives in service to others. They do this because of a calling. How do you respond when the heat gets turned up? What do you do when the situation gets too hot? Will you stand strong or will you cave in under pressure? In this chapter of the story, we're going to find out what happens to God's people when they're taken away into a foreign land. Would they cave in and go along with the culture, or would they remain true to God? For hundreds of years, God had called His people to turn away from their foreign gods and commit themselves to fully follow Him. He had sent prophets to warn them of the consequences of their failure to obey. All of this was because God wanted a people for Himself that He could love and that would return love to Him. I will look on you with favor and make you fruitful and increase your numbers, and I will keep my covenant with you. You will still be eating last year's harvest when you will have to move it out to make room for the new. I will put my dwelling place among you, and I will not abhor you. I will walk among you and be your God, and you will be my people. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt so that you would no longer be slaves to the Egyptians. I broke the bars of your yoke and enabled you to walk with heads held high. The people failed to fully commit to God, and so as God's judgment is carried out, God's people are carried away. The northern tribes called Israel are exiled to Assyria. The southern tribes called Judah are taken into captivity in Babylon. It would be in Babylon that they would be exposed to the very influences that God had told them to avoid. Now, for those that had compromised back home, this might not have been too big of a deal. But what about those who had remained faithful to God? How would they do in the midst of this foreign culture? Our story takes place in Babylon. This is the land that Judah had been taken to for captivity. Here again we see the very sovereign hand of God at work. King Nebuchadnezzar wants to include in his service some of the best and brightest of his newly conquered land. And so he chooses those from the royal family of Judah. This includes 4 young men, Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They are to be immersed in the culture of Babylon, its education, its ways. They are to be influenced by its surroundings. During their training, they were provided with the best food and drink directly from the king's table. Now, most people would have thought that was a treat, but our young men realized that this food was unclean, not acceptable in their tradition. And so they asked for a simple diet of fruits and vegetables. Well, those that were in charge of Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were concerned that they might not become strong enough, and they were worried about how the king might react. But our guys, they had God on their side. Please test your servants for 10 days. Give us nothing but vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then compare our appearance with that of the young men who eat the royal food, and treat your servants in accordance with what you see. So he agreed to this and tested them for 10 days. At the end of the 10 days, they looked healthier and better nourished than any of the young men who ate the royal food. So the guard took away their choice food and the wine they were to drink and gave them vegetables instead. The Bible said that God caused those in charge of Daniel to look with favor upon his request. In fact, God made it so that Daniel and his friends were better nourished on their limited diet of fruit and vegetables than the others were eating from the fat of the king's table. The Bible goes on further to say that God gave Daniel and his friends greater insight and greater wisdom than anybody else. As the story continues, Daniel is given the ability to understand and interpret the king's dream. Well, Daniel is very clear on the origin of this ability. In fact, when asked how he could do this, Daniel gives credit where credit is due. The king said to Daniel, also known as Belteshazzar, "Is this true? Can you tell me what my dream was and what it means?" Daniel replied, "There are no wise men, enchanters, magicians, or fortune tellers who can reveal the king's secret. But there is a God in heaven who reveals secrets, and he has shown King Nebuchadnezzar what will happen in the future. Now I will tell you your dream and the visions you saw as you lay on your bed." In response to Daniel's understanding and interpreting the king's dreams, Daniel and his friends are given high positions in the king's court. Once again, God shows his sovereignty by rearranging the very makeup of foreign governments. Then King Nebuchadnezzar fell prostrate before Daniel and paid him honor and ordered that an offering and incense be presented to him. The king said to Daniel, "Surely your God is the God of gods and the Lord of kings and a revealer of mysteries, for you were able to reveal this mystery." Then the king placed Daniel in a high position and lavished many gifts on him. He made him ruler over the entire province of Babylon and placed him in charge of all its wise men. Moreover, at Daniel's request, the king appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego administrators over the province of Babylon, while Daniel himself remained at the royal court.